Yoshi Go-Kart Tumbler, Part 2, Villain Edition. Yoshi's riding his go-kart. He's got a lap lead, but guess who's charging up behind him? It is the villain of the Super Mario World, Bowser. He is riding his teddy bear go-kart, and he is ready to overtake Yoshi and secure the win. Who will be the winner of this cup? Let's go find out. Okay, I'm going to start this project like I start most of my Tumbler projects, and that is with Sculpey Ultralight. And I wrap the whole cup in this clay to bulk it out for the body. Then once my Ultralight clay is baked and cool, then I cover it in a thin layer of Super Sculpey Original. And here begins my detestment of foil. I used so much foil for this project to create the back of his shell, which I ended up having to redo because I made it too big. And then I place it on the side of the cup, I wrap it in clay, and then start to create the shell detailing on the back of the shell. So I don't bore you, let's speed this up. Now for the edging of the shell, I take some more ultralight clay, roll it in a snake of clay, and wrap it around the turtle shell all the way and blend it in. Next we make the spikes, and I take a cone of clay, wrap a snake of clay around the base of that cone, blend it in, and then I repeat 9 more times. And I also use the ultralight clay to create the belly. Now I start the head, and I'm using more foil, and then I wrap it in some ultralight clay until it's completely covered in this clay. Next I take this topper base that I had pre-baked, I attach it to my ultralight clay to the head and blend it in. And then I skipped ahead and apparently didn't record his face, but it's all made out of ultralight clay and wrapped around the front part of his head. For his eyes, I just used a rolled out piece of clay in a kind of semicircle shape. I took a snake of clay, placed it below his eye to create the eyelid, and then I took some more snakes of clay to create the eyebrows. And then I blend it all together to make it one cohesive piece of eyebrow. I waste some time adding texture to the eyebrow when was not necessary because I was going to be blinging them anyway. Next I took some more foil and made it in the shape of a horn. I wrapped it in some clay, took some rolled out pieces of clay to create the base of the horn, and then I blended into his head. Next, I took some more ultralight clay and started to create the 4 or 5 tufts of hair that go on the back and top of his head, and of course added detailing, which I did not need to do because I was blinging it, but I wasn't thinking that way and I like to add my detail. I pre-baked his teeth. I put some ultralight on the base of the teeth and squished it into his jaw while it was still soft, 6 on one side, 6 on the other. Here I'm adding some clay to his brow line to make him look angrier and some scale texture, which I didn't need to do. While his head was baking, I'm working on painting his body and adding the tan detailing to his front part of his belly and the spikes. I did put it around the rim of his shell, but it was supposed to be white and I realized that later. Then I paint the shell green. And then I add the orange detailing around the base of the spikes. Then I finish off painting the tumbler portion of his body in this bright yellow. Now that his head is done baking, I start painting that, and I use the same orange on his horns, the red on his hair, this bright red fiery hair that he has, and on his eyebrows as well. Then I start painting the scale texture of his head, this green color. Being sure to get in all the little crevices. It is a little bit more challenging when there is a texture like this. Then I use the same tan that I used for his belly and spikes around the entire portion of his jaw and mouth and horns. Then I finished off his face by painting his eyes the same red color as his hair and eyebrows. I use my dotting tool to create the pupils, this big one, and then I use a little tiny one for the little whites of his eyes. And then I almost forgot the choker that he wears, so I add that, bake it, and then paint it black. For the construction of the cart, I used a lot of cardboard, foil, and clay to create the base of it, and a lot of foil for the head, and then I cover it all in clay, use some ultralight for the mouth. Then I added the teddy bear ears to the sides of his head where the teddy bear ears would go, and then the eyes right on the same side of each of his ears. And then of course I added a little nose at the very end of his muzzle. And used my needlepoint tool to create the little mouth. Now that his head is done, I start to work on his tail and the little mufflers that go on the sides of his tail. And I use these like cylinder shapes to create the base of that muffler, and then a little ball on top, blend it in, and then I use my ball tool to create like the hole for the muffler. For the seat, I just take a rolled out piece of clay and place it right on top, some ropes of clay to create the saddle like look that this teddy bear cart has, and then I blend it in. Now I'm not entirely sure what this is, I couldn't tell, but I think it's supposed to be where his foot would be resting. Now for the handlebars, I realized I didn't have a really good place to put them, so I had to basically sand out a hole in his head for this dowel to go. And then I wrap my clay around it with some liquid Sculpey on the clay and then blend it in. Then I take an extra rolled out piece of clay and place it right on the ends of the handlebars to create where his hands would go. Now that my cart is baked, I'm going to start working on the arms and legs, and I had to drill some holes into his body to add armature wire and then cover it in ultralight to create the shape of his arms and legs. Then once it's baked, I take some liquid Sculpey, place it on the clay, and then wrap the whole thing in some Super Sculpey. I begin to add his fingers and have them kind of curling right around the handlebar like it's holding it, but not holding it in place. Then I start to create the little bands that he has on his wrist and bicep. Then I start to add the toes to the front of his feet and make sure they kind of have a little bit of a claw at the end, and then I blend it all in. Then I repeat the same process on the other arm and leg, and then I bake it. Once it's cool, then I use the same yellow that I used for his body, for his arms and his legs. Of course, I painted his armbands in the color black. Then the last thing I have left to paint is the cart, and I paint the saddle in a couple coats of this brown. So for his head, except for the middle portion of his forehead, his ears, and his mouth, I paint it in this darker blue color. I also painted the main portion of his torso in the same color, not painting his legs or the underside of his cart. Once the dark blue was dry, then I started to paint the lighter blue on the legs and the center portion of his head and part of the mufflers. Oh, and the outer portions of his ears. Next, I move on to the color black and I paint the middle portion of the handlebars, these little ovals that I think are supposed to be footrests, and these little lug nuts, buttons. I don't know what they are, but they're black. And then, of course, his eyes. Now I'm going to move on to the yellow part of the cart. I'm not really sure what color it is. It's kind of a pale tan yellow color. Not really sure. I had to mix to get the right color, but then I paint the inside of his ears, his muzzle, the bottom of his feet, also the belly all the way up to his tail, and the little rounder parts of the mufflers. I also painted on the stitch marks that the teddy bear has, but because it's so hard to rhinestone, I kind of wish that I just left it blue. Then I move on to the ends of the handlebars by painting them red, and then adding that same red to the front part of his leg to create that Bowser logo, and then filling in all the details with black. Now, I didn't record the actual construction of the wheel part, but I did record this. I took some wooden wheels that I got from Hobby Lobby, covered them in ultralight, used these biscuit cutters to create the detailing of the wheel. Then I baked it and painted it. To attach it, I drilled some holes in the bottom of the legs and then used some wooden dowels and glued them together. But while my wheels are baking, this is what he looked like before blinging. I didn't record the blinging because it was just a very long and tedious process. If you would like to see any blinging, just go watch my Yoshi video. It's very much the same. And here he is in all his rhinestone glory. This project probably took me about 7 months to finish. It was a very long and tedious process, but I'm so excited to see it finished and completed because I think it turned out amazing. He is my biggest project to date, and probably will be a long time before I make anything this big again. Here he is in all of his glory. I believe he's about 17 inches tall from the top of his head to the bottom. He's about 12 inches wide from the top of the bear's nose all the way back here, and I think he's roughly 16 or 17 pounds. I'm guessing, and this is a huge guess, that I used at least 40,000 rhinestones to bling this guy. He was, no joke, a project. And a fun one, to say the least. Now, I'm exhausted and happy that he's done, but I'm also happy to say that I made him. This was an absolute blast. It's just so fun to see something this big come to life and to be able to say you finished it. It's not something everybody can say they can do or even would want to do, and the fact that I did it is an achievement nonetheless. So I feel like I got first prize for finishing this race against myself. I hope you all had a great time watching me make him. I apologize I didn't record the blinging, but it was just a lot of blinging and it was way too cold out of my workshop to actually record any of it. But if you saw my Yoshi, you basically saw how I blinged him. exact same process. I hope you all enjoyed watching me make this. This was such a fun project, and to be able to say that I finished it is even more fun. If you did like this video, maybe boop the like button so that I'm aware that I'm making content that you guys are enjoying and pushing this video out to people who also like this sort of content as well. Also, if you haven't already, go watch the OG Mario Kart Tumblr video that I did with Yoshi, because he was the reason that I made Bowser in the first place. And for the question of the day, who is your go-to Mario Kart driver? Leave a comment in the comment section so that I can hear it, because I'd love to know who your favorites are. My favorite is always going to be Yoshi. Yoshi has my heart, which is why I chose him for my OG Tumblr Kart video. If I don't have Yoshi, then I'll go Koopa, but Yoshi's going to always win out in the end. Anyways, I hope you all have a great day, and remember to stay crafty.